All right. Well, here we begin our second recording. Another hour-long video launched into the void. Um, I wanted to first discuss a choice I've made for this channel, um, and that is essentially to be anonymous. I actually, for the first video, I published it at first um, over Zoom, and I had video of my face and everything. But I thought about it some more, and I created this separate channel and uploaded it there instead and got rid of the video. And I think that that's better. Um, as I mentioned, I'm kind of very private about my personal religious beliefs and stuff. And I have family members, um, who are very devout. And so I think it's best that this be anonymous. It's slightly cowardly to do it this way, to be honest. You know, I wish I was just the kind of person that could be just very upfront, but for various reasons, I just at this point in my life, I don't want to be there and cause those problems, especially for my family members. If it was just for me, I wouldn't care. I would, um, but I foresee that me speaking very openly about this might might create problems for um, my family. And so for now, I chose to remain completely anonymous. Um, and the good thing, though, is that I believe that being anonymous will not detract at all from what I present here or my arguments at all. So I don't think it would be a very big deal, that I choose to do this anonymously. Really, the main idea is just to have me talk out these issues with myself, just so that I know what I so I talk through my beliefs and I know what and so I know where um and I develop on my ideas just through talking. It's not really that this channel is going to be ever popular. I cannot imagine that. Nor do I particularly want that to be the case. But well, I guess there is one reason why I might actually want this channel to become more not popular, but to have at least some people who are following along. And that is that if people follow along, maybe they can help me along the path. They can um, eh, perhaps engage with the material that I put out and um, tell me, like give me some feedback on what, and that can be helpful. So I guess there is a reason for me to want to have more people engaging with the material. Um, and in that sense, I guess I should try at least to get rid of some of the most obvious negatives, about the channel and improve with time. And I'm sure I will. Um, but that is definitely this a secondary goal. The primary goal is just to have a platform where I can talk this out. Um, and I think I can do that while remaining anonymous. And anonymity will not necessarily completely undermine that primary purpose for the channel. So, with that out of the way, I wanted to now switch over and talk about why this religious question is very important for me and why I think that um, why what essentially drove me to begin this channel. So, really, for people like myself, it's very hard to figure out what to do um, on like even in any given day, without having a fully fleshed out philosophy of life. So, like for deciding what I should do today, for example, should I spend more time on my work? Should I spend more time with my family? Um, should I try to go out of my way to, I don't know, um, uh, like, I guess, date? Should I, um, should I spend more time learning programming because of, looking at my future career path? And so there are all these options, and to choose between them, you kind of need to have some idea of what your goals are for your life, and to be able to prioritize them. So okay, what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? And then you can think to yourself, what is the optimal way to get to those goals? Um, but my issue is um, that it's hard for me. I don't really have any. And then you go one step backwards. So you have these goals, but then the question is why why those goals instead of other goals? And that has to take you back to some philosophy of life that you must hold. So all those goals come out of that philosophy. So let's suppose that my philosophy of life was that um, um, that is the life is just I guess inherently doesn't have some higher goal or inherent meaning, and that it's just like a set number of years that you have to live, and then afterwards, you just you die and that's it, and there's no afterlife or anything. Well, in that case, um, I would say then my goals in life would be, to essentially avoid suffering. I'd say would be then my goal, to avoid suffering and to just have a decent life. I'd want a decent job where I wouldn't have to work so hard. I'd want, a family, and I just, you know, would essentially live out my years, try to take care of my health as much as possible, and and so I guess my goals would be to have a career that fits this overarching plan of being comfortable, secure, and decent paying, um, and and on the personal side, like you'd probably want to have a family. Um, so um, so yeah, so that's a life philosophy, and out of that comes out naturally those goals, and then you can pursue those goals on a daily on a day by day basis, like translate them into actionable plans for each day. um but my issue is that I still don't really have a coherent philosophy of life, um and it all has to do with that question of what is the good life? Like, what life would I want to lead? And that's inextricably linked to the question of God's existence for me. Um, and so, really, I guess the main goal now has to be to settle um, on a philosophy of life that I can live by. And then once there is that philosophy of life, then take it from there. Then life can actually kind of begin once you accomplish that goal. Um, so so that's where I'm at right now, and that's why I think this question is very prescient. For me, it has been very prescient all my life, but especially now. So the question is, how do I make progress in finding out a philosophy of life that can work for me? Um, and that's a really hard question. So I told you guys from the last video exactly where I'm at in my quote unquote religious journey. Um, and so right now I'm stuck at whether I have these spiritual experiences or religious experiences, and I'm stuck at whether they are actually real or whether like they signify something that's true in the external world or they're kind of just in my head. And so the only way I can think of like determining one way or the other uh, is the test of experiment. And I told you guys about the quote unquote shoebox experiment, from last time. And the results of that experiment are negative. So we kind of have to go from there and see if we can establish the the fact that there is that the religious experiences that one has are actually significant, um, outside of just what's happening in your own head. And so here, I kind of wanted to talk about that a little more. So religious experiences, um, I kind of like um, uh, to draw a comparison with some other experience that people have, namely the experience of fear. So fear is a feeling that we have, but it is also can be thought of as a sense of the world, in the sense that fear can correspond to something in the external world as well. So, um, uh, for example, it can communicate something about the external world. It's not necessarily entirely self-generated. So, if you are walking in a hike or something, and then you turn and there's like a cliff right next to you, you will feel perhaps a sense of fear. Um, but that sense of fear is actually um, accurate to what's happening in the external world. You are actually, it's alerting you to something out there in the world, that there is a legitimate um, uh, um, danger to your life, in the form of the cliff that you might fall off. Or if you see a snake on your path, again, you'll have that sense of fear. And again, it's accurate sense. It gives you real proof or evidence. It gives you a real um, contact with the external world. Um, so the sense of fear can be either uh, 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 true to the external world, or it can be pathological. So pathological fear would be like like general anxiety. So like people don't really have a legitimate reason for being afraid. They just are anxious about uh, just everything, or they're anxious just to in general. They fear, they're like afraid without any legitimate reason for fear. um, and so fear, as a sense, can tell you things about what's happening in the external world, but it can also be pathological. Or it can manifest in the form of a phobia, where something that really is not dangerous triggers this overwhelming sense of fear. Like people who are very terrified of bridges or very terrified of elevators. Um, so that is a sense of fear triggered by the external world, but it is incorrect. So here we can differentiate between uh, different uh, three different types of fear. So you have fear of an external object that is legitimate. So like you see a certain snake on the road, and actually snakes can be dangerous. So you have a sense of fear that's associated with that. So that is related to something that you comes from the external world, and it's legitimate. It's something that is actually dangerous. You have fear that is illegitimate, but comes from the external world. So that can be like you see an elevator, or you see something that's not necessarily dangerous, and you have this sense of fear. We can call those like phobias. Um, and then you have the third class would be fears that are don't correspond to anything in the external world, that are actually like um, just a response to internal states. And that can be, uh, we can call it like pathological fear or anxiety, where it's like there isn't really anything that's triggering this sense of dread or fear. It's just it's just generated by images or thoughts in your own head. Um, so I think that religious experiences can be actually classed very similarly. So people have a religious experience when there are certain triggers that give people these religious experiences. And again, in the previous video, I made a first run attempt at defining what these experiences are. But generally, um, they're accompanied, really the crucial part of these experiences is that they feel extremely meaningful while they're happening. um uh, and what and but I'll talk more about, or to try to class these religious experiences in general. But for now, they are essentially experiences of awe, or of fulfillment, or of joy, happiness, that or not, yeah, joy, I would say, that are um, very intense, and that are accompanied by this overwhelming sense of importance, and a kind of sense that one is in contact with something bigger than oneself. Um, so those are sometimes called aesthetic experiences, or sometimes they're called um, uh, spiritual experiences, but whatever one calls them, that's what I'm referring to. Those types of experiences. So again, I think those experiences can be they can be triggered internally or externally, and they can be perhaps true or false or pathological. So you can imagine that you can have this sense of um, uh, awe or wonder, and that it does it in the same way that fear can tell you something actually true about the external world. Can that sense also tell you something that's true about the external world? Um, or is it in all its cases um, pathological? Um, now, so I I'm tempted to say that the former, but like that there must be situations. There must be situations where like this religious experience is, um, this experience of meaning is um, actually a sense of what's in happening in the external world. Um, but that question needs to be thought of and discussed, I think, in a lot more detail. Um, but um, but you guys see what I mean. So I want somehow to prove that this religious experience does correspond to something, at least sometimes, in the external world. Um, I guess the only way to do that so for example, if we take the fear analogy, in fear, um, I guess the way to see whether, or to decide whether that sense of fear is accurate or inaccurate, is to look up the statistics, I guess, and to see like, okay, like how many, like, are snakes actually dangerous to people? Um, like, can they do harm to people? Um, and 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 then you decide whether they're actually dangerous or not, based on that, like how much threat they actually um, put to someone. Um, so I guess that's the way that you can, using your mind, determine whether a feeling, quote unquote, or a sense of fear that you're experiencing is legitimate or illegitimate. Um, does correspond to the external world or does not correspond to the external world. Um, for religious experiences, I suppose there must be a sort of similar test that one can do, in the sense of, I guess, it's less clear for the religious experience than it is for fear, because in a religious experience you don't really, like, what is the point of it? Um, like, the point of fear is that it's alerting you to something in the external world that can be potentially dangerous to you, and it's telling you to prepare and to uh, deal with this threat in the external world. So the point of fear is to confront you with a threat to your health or to your status, or something like that. Um, to some imminent threat. So what is the point of the religious experience? Um, I think we can maybe say that the point of the religious experience is to direct you to what is, maybe what is worth doing, or to direct you to what is um, important, to direct you to how you should live your life, maybe. Okay, it can be thought of that way. Um, because you always feel this sense of deep meaning, but the thing is, it doesn't really draw you. It doesn't, like, it doesn't clearly, like with fear, it's clear what you should do. Like, if you have, and actually the response to fear is almost built into our bodies. Like, you feel a sense of fear, you see a snake on the road, you feel a sense of fear, and you naturally just jump back before you even, like, consciously recognize that, the snake, and fully think out the situation. It's just built into you to respond immediately, so you're avoiding this danger. But um, but with the religious experience, there isn't really something obvious that you should do. Um, so, for example, you go out at night and it's a beautiful starry night, and you look up at the stars and they're, very nice and beautiful and everything. Um, but then, and you get goosebumps and you have this overwhelming sense of importance or significance. But then, what do you do about that? Um, what is the point of that feeling? Like, why? Um, I guess historically, what people have done about that is prayer, or some sort of religious ritual. And that was their response to this feeling. Um, and I do feel like that is a natural response, because they feel like there's something way bigger than them, and they sort of want contact with that thing. And so, um, and so I guess the point would be, um, to engage with that thing that is meaningful. Um, it may be like a call to prayer, you know. But yeah, I'm not sure. I would be interested if there is anyone, which I sincerely doubt, if there is anyone who is actually watching or listening to this. I I would be very interested to hear what you think about this. Like, what is the point of a religious experience? Like, in the same way that fear is trying to identify some danger and get you to deal with it, what is the religious experience trying to do? Um, Maybe that is actually can be thought of as conceptualized as God seeking contact with people, um, as a form of revelation. Um, that's actually such a beautiful way to think about it. Um, that it's God revealing some part of Himself to you. But then, why does God only reveal Himself to people in that way? Um, like, why can it be more some other way that can be more clear or obvious? Um, and the so yeah, like, like why not the shoebox experiment? Like God, I guess in this case, only reveals himself in those moments and reveals himself only in certain aspects of himself. And he doesn't really necessarily answer your own questions. It's more like he grants you access to, I guess, some facet of his character, of him or of himself. And but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why it is that way. I mean, it's definitely like there is an emotional difference and like a psychological difference between meeting God through the shoebox experiment or getting a signal of God's existence through the shoebox experiment and like these sorts of religious experiences where people have this meet they feel like they have this connection with something higher than themselves. um but I do feel that those instances are very important. um but now suppose one is wondering whether this is like an actual, whether one when one feels that sense of connection, whether this is an actually true, or whether it's, I don't know, like something that's in your head or something like that. How does one actually determine uh that? I'm actually not sure. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess, sorry, I guess I really do need a script for these videos, um, because you can't really s think during the video. Um, but this is a very interesting point. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, anyways, we'll put a pause on that for a bit, but uh, so we can return back to what are the steps that I should be taking right now. You know, clearly, this is way more important than anything else in my life at the moment. Um, like right now, I'm trying to wrap up um, my degree, um, and I'm trying to get a job um, as well afterwards and applying to that and stuff. And I'm thinking about what I want to do in the future and stuff. But clearly, the first question to settle is this question of what is the significance of these religious experiences, and are they telling me, s- um, are they real? Like, do they correspond to something that's true in the external world? And then what do I do about that? Um, so how would I accomplish that? How would I gain insight into this? I think what I need to do is I need to talk to people who have thought about um, this particular problem or this particular issue. Um, one example that comes to my mind is uh, William James, the variety um, of religious experiences. I think that's like interesting. That's sort of tackling the same sort of problem. Um, where it's a question of what is the significance of these sorts of religious experiences that people have. Um, but I guess I need to gather as much information on this question as I possibly can from sources um, like from writings of others, from mm, also those who are um, maybe some sort of like religious authority, um, and maybe just people, random people, as well. Because I think everyone experiences those feelings, religious experiences, and everyone has an idea of what they mean or what they signify. And yeah, it would be interesting to see what people think. Um, because everyone has a right to talk about this. This is so human, you know. Um, and yeah, and then so do all of that, and then from that get an idea of like what is actually true. Um, and then go from there. So that's my task till next video. Um, I also had an idea that I could take this really long, like um, essentially do the through hike the Appalachian Trail, just to give myself alone time because I've significant alone time so that I can think through this as well, and think this through completely, so that I know how I want to live my life, how I want to orient myself in the world, like to. But we'll see. I think the first thing to do would be just to ask religious people. First, this is the path of least resistance, and then go from there. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So before next time, I want to ask mm, three people about this question, um, and see what the responses would be. Um, so the question is, you have these sorts of very meaningful experiences to you, and what do you make of them? Um, or w- how do you respond to them? Like, or how do you know that they correspond to something true in the external world and not just in your head? Um, or whether you think they do. So I'll ask people this question, and I'll be back again to talk more um, about this and similar related topics. All right, this was the second video. Thank you for watching or listening. If you actually have been listening on to now, again, I congratulate you. You've now had 2 hours of listening to myself, to moi, um, and lucky you. Alas, you do not get to see my face, or perhaps you are lucky. You don't get to actually see my face. But yeah, all right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.